What's up guys, today is part 8 of the full AMV guide for beginners, and today we're going to cover how to do color grading and color correction. And the reason I do it at this stage of our tutorial series is because we can always disable it later, and if we're going to add effects then we can already see what it will look like with our color correction on. Alright, let's get right into the video. First of all, we got these warps here, so from previous episodes, and I actually want to move them to our movement composition. So let's select the top one, and then hold shift, and then select the bottom one, and then hold Ctrl plus X. So this will delete it and copy it before. Then we go to the movement and shakes composition, like here. And then here we can just say Ctrl plus V. Alright, now they're somewhere in our composition, and we can just hold Ctrl plus K to make the duration a little longer, like 10 seconds. And then, as you can see, if you drag it out, here are our clips. So you can just drag them back. So now they're aligned again. Alright, then we can just go to here again, hold Alt and use your mouse wheel to zoom in. And then you can just press N, and this will basically move the composition length to the spot you want. So now we're going to drag it a little to the left, like this. And then we're going to right click on it, trim comp to work area. Alright, so now it's resetted back. Now you can go back to our main edit. And as you can see, our warps are still there. Alright, now first of all, let's create an adjustment layer, so Ctrl Alt plus Y, and then trim it down to the clip's length, like this. Alright, and let's just call it CC. And before we even add any effects on this, we're going to go back to movement and shakes. And then here, firstly, we're going to correct the colors of our actual clips. So for example here, I like the colors, so we're just going to keep it. Then here it's kind of gray again. So if we switch between these clips, the color grading will look kind of weird. So honestly, we'll just keep this one more gray, and then we'll change this one to be more gray too. So let's add something called Lumetri color. And then here, as you can see again, we got this black bar again. That's just because our CC repetal is at the top, and it always needs to be at the bottom. Alright, then base correction. Here we'll just change the saturation. Alright, something like this. Make it a little less warm. So change the temperature. Alright, now it looks a little more similar, which will help a lot with the color grading. Alright, then here, you want to make it a little more bright. So again, the Lumetri color, add it on top. Then base correction, and then here we want it a little warmer. Then the saturation, we won't change this. Then the exposure, you want to make it a little more bright. Like this. Even brighter actually. You can also change around the shadows to be brighter. So that means the darker parts will get a little brighter. Alright, so now they look a lot more similar, which will help us a lot. Alright, then we're just going to go back to our main edit. And here there are several methods to do your color grading. So the first one is to use a plugin called Magic Bullet Lux. Then the second one is with Lumetri color. So that's something everyone can do because it's stock and it's already within After Effects. And then the third method is with Colorista. And this one is basically like Lumetri color, but just from the same company from Magic Bullet Lux. So there's a little more options here. And you can also save presets and stuff, which is really cool. And there's actually another method, and that's just to use like separate effects, for example curves, to just like add every single effect separately. And that could work too. But honestly, for today, I want to make it a little more easy. So we're going to use Magic Bullet Lux and Lumetri color. Alright, so let's delete this. And first of all, let's start off with a Lumetri color, like this. And we're going to go to basic correction. And here we just want to experiment a little with what colors we really want in our scene. So for example, maybe we want like a more of a warm color grading, like this. Or maybe more of a cold one. In the preview edit, I used more of a colder color grading. And now you can go into creative or curves or stuff like that. But honestly, I like to do those things in Magic Bullet Lux. Now the last thing you can do in the Lumetri color is a vignette. But honestly, after we did Magic Bullet Lux, we will just add another Lumetri color and then have the vignette above all that. So that will look way better. So let's add Lux. Alright, and you can just go to edit. Alright, and here the first thing I like to add is a LUT. If you don't have a LUT, then it's not necessary, but it can honestly be very useful to immediately see some colors in your edit. I really like this one actually. I created this one myself, so there's also a link in the description if you want to buy these presets in my shop. Alright, so let's select this one, really good. Then we're gonna add something called Colorista. So this is like the small version of what we saw in like one of the methods you could just add on your clip. So this is like the small version of it. So we're gonna change the temperature to be a little colder. Then we're going to leave the contrast, maybe make it a little brighter. Alright, then the saturation, we're just going to leave it. Most things have been done by our LUT, so it's fine. Then we might want to remove some colors. For example, I really like this brown, but this green in the back is kind of distracting. So let's grab the green and drag it to the center. And as you can see, now it's kind of more gray. So this circle here is to desaturate your colors, and you can even saturate them even more when you drag them outwards. Then this one is to just make them darker. So for example, this orange, if you drag it outwards, as you can see, this will just make it brighter or darker. So that is what this circle does. Then I also like to remove this saturation. So from the complete black parts, I just like to desaturate everything. So the hair just looks fully black, for example, and not just maybe some tint of blue, you know. So that makes it look a little better. And then here in the end, you can add even more contrast. But our LUT already had some contrast, so we won't need to do too much. You could also do the same thing with an S-curve, so that's also something you can add. Then you can add a hue saturation. So if there's still too much saturation, then you can also add this one. And then a clarity is also useful. So we'll add that one. Basically makes it a little more sharp. But in the end, we'll also add an effect called sharpen, which will basically do almost the same thing. But some editors like this effect more because it gives this like white border lines and stuff like that. So as you can see, if you set it to 50, you can see it's just like this. It's just a little bit different than sharpen. So we're not gonna set it as high, maybe like 30. Alright, but it can look really good. Then the last thing is optical diffusion, so we'll add that too. I always like to set it really high, so we can see what we're working with. Then change the size a little. The highlights only, make it higher, that's very important. Honestly, this effect, you only want it to affect like the highlights. You never really wanted to set it really low, because then everything will get kind of blurry and stuff, and it doesn't really look good. So usually something like 95. And now you can start to change it back to a normal value. And then here you can just disable it and enable it again to see what you changed. So sometimes when you leave it on, you barely see anything. But sometimes when you disable it again, you can really see what it impacts. For example, around this ear, it looks really good. And without, it's kind of harsh. Now you can also add halation. It's kind of this red glow, which makes it more realistic. So you can add that too. Again, the same principle. We'll just make it a really high size and a really high amount. And now you can see it very clearly, like this red glow. We'll do something like this. Then something like this. And then the size, let's change it a little like this. So a little smaller. And then we can just change the amount again. And as you can see, very subtle again. But it does give a difference. And this effect basically makes it look very realistic, because you see this effect also in like very high quality film cameras, for example. So just adds another touch of quality. And then that's kind of it. There's obviously some other effects like film print to create a whole different vibe and stuff. But for this tutorial, we covered the most important effects. And you also got the basics, of course, like exposure and contrast. But we already did those things in our Lumetri color. All right. Then the last thing in Colorista, you can also change these 3 circles. So for now, I kind of like the colors and it fits the vibe of our edit. But obviously, if you want some more like reds, for example, in your shadows, you can just do that by doing this. But never go too extreme like this, because then it just won't look good anymore. So we might change the midtones to be a little warmer, or actually maybe the highlights. Yeah, that's better. So something like this. All right, then press enter. And now what you'll always have, you've been like stuck on this one frame of your edit, and you try to make it look perfect. So this frame looks really beautiful. In fact, this entire clip looks really beautiful. But then when you go to the next clip, sometimes it looks kind of shit, honestly, like this, for example. So we'll just go back and we'll change that. Add a lumetri color and add it above the CC repeat tile. And then we can add some more saturation. All right, so now it's a little more lively. All right, so it looks a little better. This clip is just really gray, so you gotta keep that in mind when choosing your clips too. Okay, so now our clips really look kind of similar, which is a good thing. Sometimes you really just gotta choose the right clips, because in this example, we got a lot of the same colors, this kind of blue. And here, the exact same thing. We got a lot of blue, and then when you do your color grading, you can't really change around those colors to be different. So there will be a lot of monotone colors. And then, for example, in this clip, we got some green going on, some brown, some blue. And it will just make your color grading automatically way better. So that shows again that clip selection is very important. All right, then the last thing to finish it off is to add another lumetri color. And then, as we said before, we're going to add a vignette. So go down here, then the amount -5. Then we'll just set the feather to 0. Set the midpoint to 55, the roundness to 25, and then you can set the feather to something like 80 again. So again, same principle. I always like to kind of like set one value to 0 or 100 completely, just to see what I'm working with. And that's like a very useful tip you can apply to many things. All right, and now you kind of got like darker edges, which really adds to the vibe of your edit. All right, so this is how you do your color correction and color grading. Hopefully you've learned a lot, and if you did, make sure to subscribe. And if you want me to help you even more with After Effects, then make sure to go to the first link in the description down below. All right, bye-bye.